And my instant reaction is, oh, how quickly they forget. Right? How quickly they forget. As the Pope would say, no Clark, no spark. Caitlin Clark is now 2 years removed from women's college basketball. Out of sight, out of mind, women's college basketball now is. Out of sight, out.
That's the head coach of UCLA women's basketball. And she just said the quiet part out loud. After coaching the only ranked matchup of the day, only one media member showed up to ask questions. One. And she's calling out the entire sports media industry for abandoning women's college basketball. The moment Caitlin Clark left for the WNBA, here's the truth nobody wants to admit. 2 years ago, when Clark was dropping logo threes at Iowa, ESPN couldn't shut up about women's college basketball. Studio shows, daily segments, wall-to-wall coverage. Fast forward to January 2025, and Corey Close is standing in an empty media room, wondering where everybody went. The answer? Uncomfortable, but also undeniable.
Clark never existed. For the casual fan. We are back to those levels of not caring about women's college basketball. Folks, I didn't care about women's college basketball until I heard of Caitlin Clark. Guilty as charged. And I didn't care. ESPN didn't care. Fox Sports didn't care. Independent media didn't care. Random podcasters didn't care. They just didn't care. And now that she's no longer in college basketball.
He's not wrong. Before Caitlin Clark's junior year at Iowa, casual sports fans didn't even know women's college basketball existed. Ratings were abysmal. Media coverage?
Non-existent.
The only people watching were diehard fans and family members. Then Clark showed up, started breaking scoring records, and suddenly everyone acted like they'd been paying attention all along. Let's be specific about the timeline. During Clark's senior year in 2024, Iowa's games averaged over 2 million viewers. ESPN dedicated entire segments analyzing her shot selection. Fox Sports ran daily features. Independent podcasters who'd never mentioned women's basketball suddenly became experts. The NCAA Tournament Championship game drew 18.7 million viewers, the most watched basketball game, men's or women's, in 5 years, and now UCLA plays a ranked opponent. One reporter shows up. Not because the game wasn't competitive. Not because UCLA isn't good. But because the player who made casual fans care is gone. And the industry is realizing something it should have known from the start.
There's college football playoff. There's hockey. And there's what's that other league? Oh yeah, the NFL is taking, there's some other things that media would rather do. They saw Caitlin Clark. They saw the hype. They saw the attention. They jumped on board. You guys really bought into the fact that they cared about you. What did they say in Temptation? Nobody care about you, Otis! They're here for me! Yeah.
A college football playoff, NHL games, the NFL. Those are the usual excuses, and they're not entirely wrong. But here's what makes this revealing. Those competing events existed during Caitlin Clark's era too. The NFL was still the NFL in 2024. College football still had massive ratings. Hockey was still on television. Yet somehow, when Clark was playing, women's college basketball found an audience. The difference wasn't a competition for attention. The difference was one player, compelling enough to make people care about a sport they'd previously ignored. And the moment she graduated, the entire ecosystem collapsed back to 2022. Juju Watkins at USC was supposed to be the next torchbearer. She got injured. Paige Bueckers was supposed to carry the momentum after being drafted in 2025. She's in the WNBA now, and we'll get to her situation in a minute, because it's equally revealing about how the industry treats women's basketball.
Vignettes talking about these players like there were 2-3 years ago? I haven't seen it. Caitlin Clark, she hit first take. They were talking about Caitlin Clark on ESPN every day when she was at Iowa. Caitlin Clark and Lisa Bluter. Caitlin Clark in Iowa. Caitlin Clark. And now she's gone, and now there's no Clark, no spark. Is anybody really watching Dawn Staley in South Carolina? No? Oh, okay. I was just asking. Shout out to...
That's the reality check right there. He's admitting what most people won't say out loud. He didn't care about women's college basketball until Caitlin Clark made it impossible to ignore. And he's not alone. The data backs this up completely. In 2022, before Clark's breakout junior season, the average women's college basketball game drew about 400,000 viewers. By her senior year in 2024, Iowa's regular season games were pulling 2 to 3 million. Here's the critical part. Other teams didn't see the same bump when Iowa wasn't playing. Viewership remained relatively flat. The audience wasn't tuning in for women's college basketball as a product. They were tuning in for Caitlin Clark as a phenomenon, and the media knew this. They weren't suddenly enlightened about the quality of women's basketball. They were chasing clicks, views, and engagement. Clark delivered all three. So, they covered her obsessively. In doing so, they created the illusion that women's college basketball had arrived as a mainstream sport, but it hadn't. One player had arrived. The sport was still where it always was.
Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate that so much. My channel, not Steven's channel. I think that you have to have a broader view of growing the game if you're going to really appreciate it, as you referred to. The reality is, Caitlin Clark has risen a level of fan base that has broadened it, has deepened it, that we are all benefiting from. Close said per a December 9th Instagram post from Steven Smith's show. Let's build each other up. I think there's such a thing in that case. There's no bad publicity or exposure. No bad publicity. I mean, if you guys aren't mad at the bad publicity, then I'll cover you. I can't say I'd be too favored.
Dawn Staley's South Carolina team is undefeated and ranked number 1. Him Moy has LSU competing at the highest level. Paige Bueckers is in her first WNBA season with the Minnesota Lynx. FJ Johnson is one of the most marketable players in college basketball, and the answer to his question is brutally simple. No, people aren't really watching. South Carolina's games this season are averaging about 600,000 viewers, which sounds decent until you remember that Iowa was pulling triple that with Caitlin Clark. LSU's numbers are similar. The interest just isn't there anymore, but it's not because these teams aren't good. South Carolina is dominant. LSU is talented and entertaining. But dominance and talent weren't what drove the Clark-era ratings. Star power, specifically one star's power, did. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for the people who spent 2 years insisting Caitlin Clark was simply the face of a rising tide that would lift all boats. The tide has receded. The boats are sitting on the sand. Coaches like Corey Close are left looking around, wondering why the water disappeared so quickly.
And this logo, yikes. This logo, let's get to it. This logo, to me, is proof that Nike just doesn't care. This is the logo that you get when you just don't want to put in any effort. You don't want to think at all. You don't want to put in any brain power. This is what the kids would call slop. Slop. Paige Bueckers, Paige bucket. This literally looks like a bucket. Like a sand bucket. This looks like you go to Home Depot, you go to the garbage section, they got those silver Barons bucket. It looks like one of those. This looks like a tin garbage can for her logo. Oh, goodness.
That logo is a perfect metaphor for how the industry treats women's basketball. Minimal effort, maximum exploitation. Nike gave Paige Bueckers a signature logo. And it's literally a bucket. Not a stylized basketball hoop. Not an artistic interpretation of her game. Just a paint bucket, the kind you buy at Home Depot for weekend projects. And this matters because it reveals the underlying problem. Nike signed Bueckers to a signature deal, not because they believed in her long-term marketability, but because they needed to respond to the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Clark signed with Nike in 2024 for a reported 8-year deal worth multiple millions. Suddenly, Nike needed other women's basketball players under contract to prove they were committed to the sport. So, they signed Bueckers. gave her a shoe line, and slapped together a logo that looks like it was designed in 15 minutes. Compare that to how Nike treats male athletes with signature deals. LeBron's logo is iconic. Jordan's is the most recognizable symbol in sports. Even lesser-known male players get thoughtfully designed branding. But Vickers gets a bucket. Because at the end of the day, Nike doesn't really believe she's going to move product. They're checking a box, fulfilling a quota, and moving on.
Just since we're here, Paige is being pushed as the face of Unrivaled. Now look at the hype. Oh, it's quiet. Unrivaled starts in 7 days. They got nobody. No Caitlyn, no Sabrina, no Asia, no Angel, no Sophie. They got nobody. Oof. Nasty, nasty, nasty.
Unrivaled is the new 3-on-3 women's basketball league, launching in January 2025, and it's being positioned as the future of women's basketball. The league secured $30 million in funding, signed 30 players to six-figure contracts, and promised to revolutionize how women's basketball is consumed. They're pushing Paige Vickers as one of the faces of the league, but here's the problem. They don't have Caitlin Clark. They don't have Sabrina Ionescu. They don't have Ari Wilson. They don't have Angel Reese. They don't have Cameron Brink, who's recovering from an ACL tear. The players who actually drive ratings and social media engagement aren't participating. Unrivaled is trying to manufacture hype around players who, while talented, haven't proven they can carry a league's viewership on their own. The silence around the launch is deafening. 7 days before the first game, there's no buzz, no viral marketing, no mainstream media coverage. Sports outlets that were running daily WNBA segments 6 months ago aren't even mentioning Unrivaled. Without star power, the industry has no incentive to cover it. Like, comment, subscribe. This means so much to me. See you next time, and as always, take it easy. That's the reality. Unrivaled starts in 7 days, and the general sports audience has no idea it exists. Compare that to the Big Three basketball league launch in 2017 with Ice Cube and former NBA stars. Love it or hate it, people knew it was happening. There was media coverage, celebrity involvement, and genuine curiosity. Unrivaled has none of that momentum. It's not that the concept is bad. 3-on-3 basketball is entertaining, production quality will likely be excellent, and the players are legitimately skilled, but the league made a critical miscalculation. They assumed that the rising interest in women's basketball during the Caitlin Clark era meant that fans would follow women's basketball anywhere, in any format, with any players. That assumption is being tested, and early indicators suggest it was wrong. Social media engagement around Unrivaled is minimal. Ticket sales haven't been disclosed, which usually means they're disappointing. And most importantly, the sports media machine that amplified every WNBA storyline 6 months ago has moved on to other topics. Let's connect all these threads. This isn't just about one coach complaining about media coverage, one bad logo, or a struggling startup league. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of what actually happened during the Caitlin Clark era and what it means for women's basketball moving forward. The narrative we were sold in 2023 and 2024 was that women's basketball had finally broken through. That decades of investment, development, and advocacy had reached a tipping point. That the sport itself had evolved to a level where mainstream audiences would embrace it permanently. And Caitlin Clark was presented as the catalyst, not the cause. The face of the movement, not the movement itself. 2 years later, with Clark now in the WNBA, we can see that narrative was always incomplete. What actually happened was that one generational talent, with a unique combination of skill, charisma, and cultural timing, captured the attention of casual sports fans who otherwise had zero interest in women's basketball. She didn't open a door that stayed open. She was the door. And when she walked through it into the WNBA, the door closed behind her. Look at the evidence. Women's college basketball viewership in 2025 is down 70% from the Clark-era peaks. Iowa, the team Caitlin Clark carried to national prominence, is averaging 800,000 viewers this season, compared to 3 million last year. Other top programs haven't picked up that audience. They've lost it. Fans didn't transfer their allegiance to the sport. They transferred it to wherever Clark went next. the WNBA is experiencing something similar. The Indiana Fever, Clark's team, averaged 1.2 million viewers per game in 2024, the highest in league history. But other WNBA teams saw a minimal increase. The Las Vegas Aces, despite winning back-to-back championships, averaged 600,000 viewers. The New York Liberty, playing in the largest media market in the country, averaged 550,000 viewers. The rising tide lifted one boat, the boat Caitlin Clark was on. This creates a massive problem for everyone invested in women's basketball as an industry. The growth strategy for the past 2 years assumed Clark's success would translate into sustained interest in the sport broadly. The WNBA negotiated a new media rights deal worth $200 million per year starting in 2026, a massive increase from the previous $50 million annually. That deal was signed at the height of Clark mania, when executives believed the rating surge was permanent. But what happens if those ratings don't hold? What happens when the 2025 WNBA season starts and non-fever games go back to drawing 300,000 viewers? What happens when the Unrivaled league launches and nobody watches? What happens when women's college basketball continues to struggle for media coverage because there's no transcendent star to build around? The answer: the entire ecosystem contracts. Sponsorship deals shrink. Media coverage decreases. Expansion plans get delayed. And the players who were told that women's basketball had finally arrived start to realize that it hasn't. Not really. What arrived was Caitlin Clark. The sport is still fighting for relevance. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in the industry wants to acknowledge.
Paige is being pushed as the face of Unrivaled.
This isn't necessarily
now look
unfair.
At the hype.
Sports are entertainment, and entertainment is driven by stars. The NBA wasn't a mainstream phenomenon until Magic Johnson and Larry Bird showed up. The WNBA's peak popularity came during the Diana Taurasi and Candace Parker era. Individual sports like tennis and golf are completely dependent on star power. Roger Federer retires. Wimbledon ratings drop 20%. Tiger Woods doesn't play, and the PGA Tour loses half its audience. The idea that women's basketball should be immune to this dynamic, that it should sustain mainstream interest without a transcendent star, is unrealistic. Every sport needs stars. The problem is that women's basketball advocates spent 2 years pretending that wasn't true. They insisted Clark was simply revealing quality that had always been there rather than admitting she was an outlier, a generational talent whose appeal was unprecedented. Now we're seeing the consequence. Corey Close is standing in an empty media room because reporters correctly assessed that a UCLA women's basketball game, no matter how competitive, isn't going to generate the clicks and engagement that justify sending someone to cover it. Nike is giving Paige Bueckers a bucket logo because they don't actually believe she's going to sell shoes at a level that justifies significant design investment. Unrivaled is launching in silence because the players they signed aren't the ones who drive viewership. None of this means women's basketball is doomed. The WNBA will continue to exist. Women's college basketball will continue to produce talented players. Leagues like Unrivaled might find a niche audience. But the dream of women's basketball as a mainstream, self-sustaining industry, competing with men's sports for attention and revenue, is on hold until the next Caitlin Clark emerges. And that might take a while. Generational talents don't come around often. The WNBA has been around for 28 years and has produced maybe 5 or 6 players who genuinely moved the needle for casual fans. Women's college basketball has an even spottier track record. Betting on another Clark-level star emerging soon is a risky proposition. So, what should the industry do? First, stop pretending. Stop acting like women's basketball has parity with men's basketball in terms of mainstream appeal. It hasn't. Pretending otherwise only sets everyone up for disappointment. Second, invest in player development and marketing for players who do have star potential. Juju Watkins, when healthy, has that potential. Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame has shown flashes, but they need support, not just hype. Third, accept that growth will be slower and more uneven than the Clark era suggested. The WNBA's new media deal is great, but it comes with expectations. If the league can't deliver ratings to justify that investment, the next negotiation will be brutal. Better to set realistic goals and exceed them than to overpromise and underdeliver. Fourth, recognize that star-driven growth isn't a weakness, It's how every sport works. Instead of resenting the fact that Caitlin Clark was the reason people cared, celebrate it. Build on it. Find the next player who can capture that same lightning in a bottle. And when you do, support them completely instead of spreading attention thin across the league. Right now, women's basketball is learning a hard lesson. You can't manufacture mainstream appeal. You can't force casual fans to care through guilt, advocacy, or appeals to fairness. They care when something is compelling. For 2 years, Caitlin Clark was compelling enough to make people care about a sport they'd ignored for decades. Now she's gone, and the industry is realizing the foundation they thought they'd built was actually just one person carrying the weight. Corey Close asked where the media went. The answer is simple. They went wherever the compelling story is. Right now, that's not women's college basketball. It's not Unrivaled, and it's barely the WNBA outside of Indiana. That's not a judgment on the quality of play or the dedication of the athletes. It's the reality of sports entertainment. So here's the question for you. Is it fair to expect women's basketball to sustain mainstream interest without a transcendent star? Or is that asking for something no sport has ever achieved? And if you insist the sport should be covered regardless of star power, are you actually watching? Are you buying tickets?